Welcome to Between the Rows, where you get to hear the story behind the stories in Glacier FarmMedia's family of publications. I'm your host this week, Laura Rance. If I asked you what the average Canadian family looks like, what would you say? You might be surprised what the annual food price report produced by a consortium of Canadian universities has to say about that. That report also highlights how our very relationship with food is changing. We'll be talking to a company that's trying to stay on top of those changes and help farmers tap into them. And finally, thanks to the efforts of Farmtario reporter Diana Martin, we'll be getting an inside look of what it feels like to be a temporary foreign farm worker in Canada as the clock ticks down to Christmas. But first, here's a word from our sponsor.
At your Nutrien Ag Solutions retail, we take seed seriously. Getting it right for your farm requires the right knowledge. That's why we operate the largest retail seed trial program in Western Canada. Our local experts can provide you with advice for balancing maturity with disease traits and getting the best seed to your crop. After all, we take your harvest seriously too. Talk to your local retail today or visit nutrienagsolutions.ca.
You're listening to Between the Rows. I'm your host, Laura Rance. By now, you've probably heard that the latest Canadian food price report is predicting food prices in Canada will rise by as much as 5% in 2021. That's the highest annual increase since they started producing this report 11 years ago. But there's more in that report than a price forecast. This year's effort, produced by a growing consortium of universities from across Canada, identifies some fundamental shifts in the makeup of Canadian families and how they look at food. I spoke with Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Thanks for joining us today, Sylvain.
My pleasure.
You know, I read a headline the other day that I never expected to see in the Wall Street Journal about how the walk-in kitchen pantry has become the new designer shoe closet. And it seems to me that was kind of consistent with the things that you discovered in this year's food price report. What were some of the things that really surprised you?
Yeah, comparing shoes and food. It's 2020 for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of things happened over the last little while. Of course, our behavior changed. Our fear for the virus has impacted our behavior. Of course, on the supply side, of course, the food industry adjusted fairly well to a changing food landscape, if you will. So we're buying more food online. This blurring line between service and retail barely exists anymore. There are lots of opportunities. The most significant change, as far as I'm concerned, for this year is how the entire supply chain has become much more democratized. So any company in the food business have access to the consumer. They can sell online. So we've seen farmers, processors sell online, and it's been just incredible to watch.
So it doesn't matter how big or how small you are, you have pretty much the same access through those online purchasing.
Absolutely. And it doesn't really matter where you are as well. I mean, there are discussions around telecommuting, more and more people working from home. In fact, we ran a survey a few months ago suggesting that 23% of employers in Canada are actually thinking of allowing their staff to work more often at home than at work. And so that really will have an impact on real estate, the real estate market, but it also will have an impact on food systems as well, whether it's service or retail. So absolutely. But of course, the common denominator, I think, for everyone is that we have spent more time at home, which points to your analogy with the pantry and shoes. You're more aware of the inventory. You're more aware of what actually is going on in your fridge and your freezer, more so than before COVID, which makes you food illiterate. Really, you're more aware of what you have. You can cook more. You probably know more recipes now. and you know how to spend your money at the grocery store. You know how to be careful as well. So I mean, so those are some of the things that we don't necessarily see in the report, but will have a huge impact on how people make decisions whenever they buy food.
Now, you in the past have reported, the food pricing components of this in the context of a average Canadian family, and this year, for the first time, you've stopped doing that. What are some of the things that you're picking up on that make it hard to decide what's the average family in Canada?
Yeah, I think, I mean, with the arrival of two new partners, the University of Saskatchewan and the University of British Columbia, it makes you reflect on things you've done. Of course, we started this report more than a decade ago, and our approach was not overly sophisticated. We basically just designed a food basket. We looked at the consumption of an adult male, adult female, children, and that was it. We didn't really ask ourselves any questions around diversity and how people are actually, spending their money on food based on their own family context, and every family is different. And that's why we're trying to reflect in this new report is you can actually read the report, and if you're a single mom with two kids, if you're two male adults heading a family or two female adults heading a family, you can actually relate to the report instead of the family that we deemed as average in the past, a male, a female, and two kids.
You also noted that for the first time in history, the most common type of household, 1 in 6 Canadian households, is occupied by a single person. How does that, what kind of implications does that have for the food chain, and how does that ripple back to the farm?
Yeah, the single food economy is going to be huge, and that percentage is only going to increase. And so when you look at the grocery store, when you look at retail, companies will have to think about servicing or serving a person who lives alone to make sure that that person doesn't waste as much food as before. Same in food service. I mean, a lot of we are leaving this era of abundance where food was easily wasted all the time. And so when you think about people living alone, you have to really customize your offering based on the appetite of one single person, and that's not easy to do. But at the same time, I think the motivation for the food industry will be to make more money because you can actually sell your unit price, I guess, your portions
Right,
at a higher price.
right.
Yep.
Now, you're finding or predicting that we will see a fairly significant increase in food prices next year. In fact, one of the highest, if not the highest increase that
It
we've
is
seen
the
since you
highest. Yeah.
it the highest. So,
Yeah.
and yet food service sales are down and expected to stay lower for the foreseeable future. So, what's the context behind the increases that you're expecting to see? Where are they coming from?
I got to tell you, Laura, I mean, as a researcher, I have a job to do. I have to let the data speak, if you will. But in my heart, I wanted, I think, and most of the 24 co-authors behind this report, I think, wanted to convey to the Canadian public some good news to finish an awful year.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, our models we ran just they were telling us that prices are going to continue to go up, and of course, prices should continue to go up. But relative to the general inflation rate, the food inflation rate will still outpace the general inflation rate. And that's really the problem. So we're basically asking Canadian families to spend more on food relative to their income, and it's going to be a challenge for a lot of people, for sure, for the next 12 months.
We've talked about this kind of event polarizing. We've got the people who actually have more disposable income And then we have people that are increasingly food secure as a result of the pandemic. So this has serious implications, obviously, for a family or for someone who's on a lower income.
Absolutely. My biggest concern is not even mentioned in this Sears report, because we just don't know what's going to happen in 2020 in relation to our fiscal headwinds we're all facing. We've been spending a lot.
Yeah.
We've seen governments everywhere spending a lot, and not just in Canada, but everywhere around the world, to deal with this awful virus. And I don't think anyone will dispute these expenses. But at some point, we're going to have a hard conversation about who's going to pay and how we're going to pay for all these expenses. And I suspect that the food industry will be a target. Taxpayers will be a target as well. So the fiscal load carried by taxpayers may increase, which means that everyone's disposable income could shrink over the next little while. So the 10% that we go ahead.
Well, I was just curious. I mean, just to go back a step, like what is driving the increase? I mean, like I say, it's not like we're going out to eat in restaurants. Like last year, we certainly saw, surging interest in people dining out for an increasing share of their food dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But what's behind the increases that you're expecting to see? Is it increased costs in the food supply chain that have to be factored in?
There's a couple of, there are, I would say, three categories that are going to be more effective this year. One is meat. Typically, Laura, you would have one piece of the meat trifecta being affected more so than others. In any given year, you'll see beef go up or chicken go up or pork. This year was all three. And we actually expect that to continue into 2021. So meat products are going to continue to become more expensive. In fact, actually, we've noticed that specialty meats are becoming more popular, like elk, bison, horse, duck. All of these products are becoming more and more popular just because consumers were spooked at the meat counter. It is might as well pay more for a product I barely know, I barely buy. It's happening a lot right now, but meat will continue to be a story in 2021. The other one is bakery. Wheat futures are up, which will indicate often that prices in bakery will rise. It's the same scenario that we saw in 2008 when bakery prices did go up significantly. Of course, at the time there was a bread price fixing scandal going on we didn't know about,
right?
But we are expecting higher prices there. And finally, produce is being affected by climate change and fires and the smoke we saw coming out of California this year. It's really forcing importers to go elsewhere. The Canadian dollar is strong still at 78 cents, which is good news. But if the Canadian dollar drops and if the barrel oil drops, then we would become way more vulnerable, unfortunately.
So, we've seen some, we've talked a little bit about this, but in terms of changing people's behavior and our relationship with food, we've seen everything from more gardening, people were getting involved with food hoarding to some extent, more family meals. To what extent do you see these as being, which of these trends is going to stick around?
It's a good question. The e-commerce one I take very seriously because over the next 5 years, grocers will be spending $12 billion on making their e-commerce strategy stronger. And so the horse has left the virtual barn, I guess. It is because grocers are learning how to make money with us online. And that it will get addictive for them. Whereas before they just didn't believe in it. COVID just forced them to commit to e-commerce. And that's what we're seeing right now. So I do see more of that. The telecommuting, I actually think is going to have an impact as well. We are expecting some stores in urban centers to close. Because of e-commerce, because of the cost to operate a grocery store has gone up, we actually do believe that the market in Canada is probably overstored. And so we are expecting closures there, and grocers will recalibrate their network of stores over the next little while. So that's probably going to have a profound change on where we get our food and from whom.
I mean, so we could see the issue of food deserts becoming more prominent then.
Well, that's exactly the point I was trying to make. For many years now, we've been trying to address the issue of food deserts. I'm not sure if COVID helped us address this issue of food desert. It could impact many communities, downtowns. Because I mean, right now you go to most downtowns. Right now, there's nobody. There's hardly anybody, and so at some point it becomes very expensive to run all these fridges and coolers for no reason.
So we're seeing, we're seeing all of these things, as you say. I mean, there's just a whole muddle of changes and things that are influenced by the pandemic, but also longer term trends that have become perhaps accelerated, like the shift towards e-commerce. What are the kinds of things that you're watching as we go into a new year, still in the midst of a crisis that we didn't even know was coming this time last year?
Yeah, well, the big question mark, I think, is the vaccine. I mean, the vaccine we think, will have an impact on the economy, will have an impact on people's behavior as well. And so that's a big question mark. We're getting some really encouraging news right now, in the Western world and Canada as well. And so that's going to probably define 2021. And it's also going to impact how we consume food, where we consume food. And I'm hopeful, and I think I speak on behalf of our entire group. I'm hopeful that we'll get back to some sort of normalcy by mid-year next year.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Laura.
We'll talk again soon.
All right, take care.
That was Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. This is Between the Rows. I'm your host, Laura Rance. Juggling the constantly changing dynamics in the food business can't be easy. For one thing, the consumer market is fickle. Foods or ingredients that are popular one day are on the hit list the next. And as we learned during the pandemic, the supply chain is vulnerable to disruptions that can't be explained by supply and demand. Here's a story about how one company is straddling that middle ground between farmers and consumers. I spoke with Tyler Grenevald, the commercial grains and oils leader for Corteva AgriScience. Hi, Tyler. Thanks for joining us on Between the Rows.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.
So there's been, this seems to be the time of year when a lot of food industry and food trend reports come out. And I've been looking at a couple of them this year. And the Canadian Food Price Report highlighted a really astonishing shift in food spending that I think we're all aware of, that, virtually overnight, the food retail to food service ratio in food budgets went from around 60-40 to 90-10. I'm just wondering how that affected a company like Corteva that's in the ingredient business.
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly, I mean, it was unanticipated, this whole eating from home phenomenon. But for Corteva and our healthy canola oil program, we've been very fortunate. I'd love to say it's been by design, but it probably more by luck, where our business, or the customers, the food companies that have adopted our healthy canola oil, are probably about 50% in the food service or the restaurant segment, and the other 50% is in the food manufacturing, or where your oil goes into key consumer packaged goods products. So we had a natural hedge, and as you had a downturn in the food service or restaurant demand, we saw a real strong offset in the oil demand that the food manufacturers were looking for as a key ingredient in so many products that we were looking for on the supermarket shelves.
So did that change how you had to serve the supply chain? I mean, was it a fairly complicated process to adapt to that new reality?
I don't think so. I think that, it was quite seamless. Certainly there was a lot of uncertainty in terms of what it would mean. But to the growers, to our real customers here, they were still able, the crop that they were intending to grow in 2020, they planted, we actually had wonderful conditions. It was a productive crop. But the surge in demand in food manufacturing or food processing is really leading to a seamless movement of crop off the farm to turn into a key canola oil ingredient. So it's been seamless, and it's our farmers certainly had to adapt, to all the challenges of COVID and managing their business, but they produced a real healthy, nutritious, safe crop, which is exactly what consumers were looking for as the result of the pandemic.
And so you're running a lot of contracting. I mean, this is a closed loop system that you're operating then with farmers.
Yeah, our contracting partners, it's very much a closed loop system. So a grower enters a contract, a processor or grain companies agrees to take it on a scheduled delivery and turn it into canola oil.
So when I look at the food price report, and both that and the Nourish food marketing report both suggest very strongly that the pandemic has changed consumers' relationship with food. We're eating at home more, as you mentioned, and cooking from scratch, and more people are interested in gardening. But according to the Global State of Snacking report, we're also becoming a nation of snackers. And why is Corteva watching that trend in particular?
Yeah, not a new trend, certainly, but for several years we've been recognizing that the people are no longer eating 3 square meals a day, as my mother and certainly my grandmother's generation supported. But consumers have really been prioritizing convenience in their diets, and also, have been evolving to what we call snackification. And snackification is basically eating snacks throughout the day as a meal replacement, not intentionally, but it's what we've been doing, and it's just been accelerated. This trend to more snacking has been a trend that, with people eating from home, has just continued to grow and evolve. So it's 42% of people are eating snack over 3 times a day. And for the mass, it's over 2.6 snacks per day, which is greater than the number of meals that people are sitting down and enjoying.
So how does that change the business and the ingredients that you're in?
So at Corteva in our canola program, I mean, we basically have a healthy, high stability oil, and if it's used in a fryer, it lasts longer, and if it's used in a consumer packaged good, it lasts longer on the shelf. But what COVID's done is it's really accelerated the trend, and consumers are looking for this permission to indulge. We're eating from home,
Oh,
talked about, but the permission to indulge, they're looking for basically a healthy ingredients in their snack food, and they're looking for convenience. We've kind of coined it healthier convenience. What the same time is what they're preserving all their taste and sensory preferences. So people are looking, they want to snack from home, but they want to eat snacks that taste good, have that wonderful flavor, but have some claims around good oils and good fats, or there's a heart symbol, something on that package that draws them to that. And canola oil is sought after in terms of a healthier ingredient.
and how does the high oleic factor in?
Well, high oleic, yeah, it's a great question. So it basically, a high oleic oil is more naturally stable without the addition of preservatives. So what that means is, as you're walking down a supermarket aisle, and you're making decisions in terms of what snack food, maybe it's what potato chip, what Frito-Lay brand of potato chip you're looking to take, but I mean, it has very much a cleaner label. There's no, it's written as fewer ingredients, which is what consumers are looking for, and we're able to, without the addition of additives or preservatives, just able to provide that sensory and the functional preference that the consumer and the food company are looking for.
So, you've mentioned that the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of some of these trends, but these were very much things that were starting to show up in the food supply chain beforehand. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, in 2004 or five, we had to get out of trans fats. But certainly cleaner labels, reducing saturated fats. These are all trends that have been occurring. We've been snacking more from home. So yeah, this accelerated snacking. It's a segment that it fits very well for healthy, high stability canola oil from Corteva or Brevant canola here in Western Canada. It works really well, and it's just something that it's a seamless transition to replace less healthy oil ingredients, if you will, in snack foods.
So I'm curious, Tyler, I've heard people in your business talk about the reverse engineering of the supply chain. And I'm just wondering what you mean by that and what implications that has for farmers.
Yeah, so I mean, it's our assertion that traditionally we talk about farmers growing a commodity to feed 10 billion people and a growing population globally. We don't think that, or we would assert that if you reverse engineer and you put the consumer at the front, let's not consider that we're growing a commodity. Let's take the assets of what we can do in a Western Canadian farm, and we're growing ingredients, important ingredients that turn into healthy, nutritious ingredients. Consumers are looking for reliable, they're looking for safe, they're looking for the right nutrition panel. So if you put the consumer at the front of it, what it basically does is we're able to then anticipate um, and identify how we can basically grow crops to meet consumer needs. So consumers are looking for how food can help solve for longer term health and wellness needs. So if they know that canola oil is good for the heart, it's low in saturates, it's used in consumers are looking for more and more of it, then we're able to bring that back to the farm and help connect the farmer and the crop he's growing to real tangible items that the family is purchasing in a supermarket.
So it's a really a different way of looking at everything that farmers do on the farm.
Well, it's about embracing what we already do. I mean, I will assert in the team that I am very fortunate to be a part of. We know that farmers, are looking at the health of the soil. They're looking for productive, profitable crops. But they want to do that in a sustainable manner. They're thinking about the next generation. Consumers, they're looking for products that are grown, as I said earlier, in a healthy, a sustainable manner. They're nutritious, and the food company wants to meet the consumer's needs while having all the functional and the sensory preferences of their product that the consumer's looking for. So I maintain everyone's looking for something similar. It's just very difficult to line everyone up. And then I think that if you look at what consumers are looking for now, and the farmer, the producer of the land, is seen as a very credible, reliable source of information and nutrition. If we start with that consumer, we bring that message right back to the farmer and everyone in the middle who wants the absolute same thing: a sustainable, a productive, and a healthy ingredient grown reliably and in a absolutely concern and care about future generations.
Well, on that note, Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Laura. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed the discussion.
We'll talk again in the near future, I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Tyler Greneville, the Commercial Grains and Oils Leader for Corteva AgriScience. With Christmas just 3 weeks away, many of us are counting down the days to the holidays. We already know that for most of us, this year's holiday will see fewer and smaller family celebrations. But for several hundred farm workers in Ontario, there's a good chance there won't be any family at all. Farmterial reporter Diana Martin traveled to a farm outside of Langton, Ontario to meet Marlon Gay, a farmhand whose chances of seeing his wife and 3 kids for Christmas grow slimmer by the day.
Come on. Come on. You sleep? Come on.
Cards slapped down on a table, a game to pass the time in a bunkhouse. Outside, the fields are covered in snow. The harvest ended over a month ago. so there's little else for the 9 farmhands at Easy Grow Farms to do. The men are temporary foreign workers from Trinidad and Tobago, 9 of several hundred stranded in Ontario because of COVID. Marlon Gay is one of the senior hands, and he's trying to bridge the 4,000 kilometers to Trinidad with a call to his wife, Jamelia, while his 3 kids romp around in the background.
Morning.
Morning.
It's okay? Morning, baby. Morning, honey. Yeah.
The line is scratchy, frustrating, but it's the only connection he has. With the crackly phone line, it's tough to make out, but Marlon's wife reads a Christmas wish list from his son.
All I want for Christmas is a bike and for my own room.
All I want for Christmas is a bike and my own room. I want to see the snow Daddy has been showing me in videos, and Mommy says I will see it one day. I want a big Christmas tree for the first time and for Mommy to put the decorations. But Daddy is not here.
Have a great Christmas this year.
I'm the sole breadwinner for my family, right? With me, makes us a family of 5. And this is my primary job in Canada here. I spend most of the year in Canada working here to support my family.
In a typical year, Marlon's Canadian season would run from March to October, 8 months of the year working in Ontario's strawberry fields. 8 months a year, he's a face on a screen, on a scratchy Zoom call to his wife and 3 kids.
I have my wife and 2 stepkids and my daughter that turned a year on the 14th of November, which I miss, her first birthday. Basically, I miss more of her life right now than I actually know her, being up here. I wasn't expecting that. I miss her first birthday, I miss her first steps, her first words, I miss everything.
When the season ended just over a month ago, temporary workers from Jamaica, St. Vincent, and Mexico were all cleared by their governments to fly home, but not Marlon and the hundreds of other Trinidadians stuck in Ontario. The government in Trinidad has yet to clear the men to return home. And there's precious little information on when things might change.
The hardest part is not what we heard, is what we are not hearing. And silence is the worst part of this whole thing. We're just not hearing anything. We haven't been given any updates. We haven't seen anybody. Nothing.
The most important thing is, like, I feel for these guys, and our whole family does, because they're away from their families.
Farm manager Dusty Zamnick has been ringing every phone he can to try and get the men home. He's called MPs, MPPs, the Trinidad and Tobago liaison, and even Trinidad's Minister of National Security, trying to get things moving.
We keep talking and addressing these people and always keeping it on top of mind. And that's how we do it. We do not stop until there's a plane ride with these guys home.
Dusty may be knocking on doors, but no one is answering. Marlon isn't even sure there is a Trinidad liaison in Canada anymore.
Everything is uncertain because we just don't know what is happening. We're not getting any answers. As far as I understand, we don't even have a liaison right now. So if word is going around that he's being replaced and that he's not even in the country at the moment. But we don't know because no one is reaching out to us.
2 deadlines loom. On December 15th, Marlon and the other hands' visas expire. They'll lose their Canadian health coverage and the right to work in the country. Even if they get the green light to fly, they could still miss Christmas with their families. Because if they fly on the 15th, the worst case scenario is a quarantine up to 14 days. Christmas could pass in isolation. But there's another, bigger problem. If they go home, they might not be able to come back next season.
2021 may be just as uncertain, if not scarier, than 2020 itself. because although we had systems in place for how, okay, you know, what does a quarantine program look like? How can we, what do we need to offer to the guys? You know, we're just as scared and gut-wrenched already, because, I mean, we got to go through this all again. Fear of shutdowns. What is the right thing to do? What is the practical thing to do, and what needs to be done?
These men support their families by working 8 months of the year in Canada. If they were barred from coming back because of visa or COVID restrictions, their livelihoods would be wiped out. No one knows how the vaccines on the horizon will change things, or how fast change can come. So they are considering the options: stay in Canada or go home and risk being locked out next March. Staying in Canada means being away from home for nearly a year and a half. Marlon already missed his daughter's first steps, first words, first birthday. If he were to stay for another year.
There isn't a day that passes that I don't speak to her, because my greatest fear is her forgetting me and not knowing who I am when I reach home, when I get home. And that is my greatest fear. So I try to keep in contact with her every day, try to laugh with her, and you know, it's hard, because she'll try to grab at the phone and kiss it, and try to touch the screen, and try to touch my face, and she don't understand what's going on. And she'll turn, look at her mother, she'll just look around and keep kissing the screen, the phone screen or whatever device at the time her mom used, trying to reach me.
For now, Marlon and the other farm hands will keep the card games going, hoping luck eventually comes down on their side.
Thanks to Farmterio's Diana Martin for bringing us this story. That's all we have for you on this week's Between the Rows, but we'll be back again next week. I hope you'll join us. I'm Laura Rance.
At your Nutrien Ag Solutions retail, we take seed seriously. Getting it right for your farm requires the right knowledge. That's why we operate the largest retail seed trial program in Western Canada. Our local experts can provide you with advice for balancing maturity with disease traits and getting the best seed to your crop. After all, we take your harvest seriously too. Talk to your local retail today or visit nutrienagsolutions.ca.
The music in today's show featured Coming Back by Lobo Loco and Earth and Sun. We also featured Leading Me On by Derek Clegg.